Hello friend, thanks for joining me for another book chat. Today let's spend some time with The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. This book was originally published back in 1991 and it's book 3 of the Wheel of Time series, which I decided to begin a couple of months ago, because of the Amazon Prime series that I've been enjoying watching. So I decided to give this series a read. It's going to take me a while to get through all 14 books, but nevertheless, The Dragon Reborn by Robert Jordan. I enjoyed this a lot. I'm going to be very careful in this chat to not give away anything that I would think would detract from a first-time reader's experience with this book, the previous 2 books, or the Amazon series. So I'm going to be focusing mostly on this chat, on just really my thoughts and impressions and the things that I found the most interesting in this particular book. So let's get to it. The Dragon Reborn. So, yeah, many of the characters from the previous book, they appear in this one. This book essentially begins where the last book, book 2, The Great Hunt, left off. And our characters are all in different places when the book sort of opens. Where there's some of our group is in Tar Valon, which is sort of the Aes Sedai city. I've explained what Aes Sedai is in the previous video, so I won't go into that too much here. But the Aes Sedai are a group of women that really are very adept at channeling the one power, the magic, the one power, the great energy, the female side of that. Males have, at this point in the history in this world, males have lost the ability to safely channel the one power. So to me, that is actually remains really the most interesting thing to me about this book is really the gendered way that the magic, the power, the sort of the energy, the universal energy is used between the genders. I just find that very fascinating and continue to enjoy that through this book. But we essentially start out with, I think, like 2 groups of our characters, where most of the characters where we left off from our last books. Not all of our characters appear again in this book to any great extent, but our main 5, the 5 young people from the 2 rivers, they're here, but they're in different places. Rand, who is sort of the main character through the first 2 books, has a little bit of a lesser role here in this book. Ultimately, he is on the search for this sword called the Sword of Calendur. The Sword of Calendur is a sangreal, which is a sort of a magical, it's a tool, a sort of a magical tool, and I'll explain a bit more about that here in a bit. But our characters, they start out the story in different places, but they all end up sort of on the same journey, but in different ways, to a city called Tyr. And Tyr is this city where the Sword of Calendur is. The Sword of Calendur is this crystalline kind of sword that won't let anybody touch it except for the Dragon Reborn. So the Dragon Reborn is explained in the previous 2 books, and I've talked about that in the previous chats as well. The Dragon Reborn is a male who can nevertheless channel the one power, channel the male energy of the one power safely, and channel it, a lot of it. The dragon is being reborn. This figure is being reborn constantly and has had many incarnations, and so there is a prophecy that he will be reborn again. And this particular sword, which is a sangreal, as I mentioned, will be able to be wielded by this person, the Dragon Reborn. So I just wanted to, this sangreals, sangreals, and terangreals are really 3 different sort of tools, magical tools, that are explained more in depth in this book. As a matter of fact, our group that is in Tar Valon, which is the Aes Sedai city, part of their quest ultimately becomes chasing some dark friends. So dark friends, I also mentioned in the previous books, dark friends are people who are sort of gone over to the dark side, and they are in the service of the Dark One. And they have stolen some of these very valuable magical tools called Angriel, Sa'angriel, and Ter'angriel. And these types of tools are left over from the Age of Legends, before the breaking of the world. The world had a whole different sort of technology and magical system before this breaking. And I've talked about this breaking in the previous couple of chats, so I won't go into that too much here. But the breaking of the world is when the males lost the ability to safely channel. And this was a showdown sort of with the dark powers that sort of kept them at bay for the last several thousand years. That's all sort of starting to change, though, as the dark powers gather forces and start to break free of the bonds that were set back several thousand years ago. So let me just explain what these tools are. The Angriel is, I looked up at the book, the edition that I read has a glossary at the back that has definitions for some of these things. And so the definition of an Angriel is remnants of the Age of Legends that allow anyone capable of channeling the one power to handle a greater amount of the power than could safely be channeled unaided. Their making is no longer known. So that's an Angriel. And then there's a Sa'angriel, which is what the Sword of Calendur is. And it is any one of a number of objects that allow an individual to channel much more of the one power than would otherwise be possible or safe. A Sa'angriel is like unto, but much more powerful than, an Angriel. And then a Ter'angriel is any one of a number of remnants of the Age of Legends that use the one power. Unlike Angriel and Sa'angriel, each Ter'angriel was made to do a particular thing. For example, one makes oaths taken with it binding. Some Ter'angriel are used by the Aes Sedai, but the original purposes of many others are largely unknown. Some will kill or destroy the ability to channel of any woman who uses them. So these tools, their use has been lost to time largely. The Aes Sedai have figured out some of them, but they are very dangerous tools to wield. And of course, the dark side can use these tools too if they get a hold of them, which they have gotten a hold of some of them in this book, and that's part of our quest for some of our characters, is to try to retrieve those. And then we also have the Sa'angriel, which is the Sword of Calendur, which is sort of the main object of some of our other characters, namely Rand, to try to retrieve. So, the Ter'angriel, though, is a type of tool that's used for a specific purpose. And one of those really explained in this book is to access Tel Aranriad, which is the dream world. So from the glossary again, Tel Aranriad, in the Old Tongue, the unseen world, or the world of dreams. A world glimpsed in dreams which was believed by the ancients to permeate and surround all other possible worlds. Unlike other dreams, what happens to living things in the world of dreams is real. So in this particular book, one of our characters is able to she has a natural sort of talent to access Tel Aranriad. And so using this Ter'angriel, she's able to then access it much better and much more coherently. So this comes in very handy. Some of the action of this novel actually takes place in this dream world. This dream world where it can impact our world. The activities in this dream world have an impact in our world here. So that to me was also a very sort of interesting thing about this particular book. And then I wanted to also talk again about Taverns. So Taveran, from the glossary, the definition here again is a person around whom the wheel of time weaves all surrounding life threads, perhaps all life threads, to form a web of destiny. See also pattern of an age. So our main characters here, specifically the three young men, Rand, Rand, Matt, and Perrin are all Ta'veren to different extent. Rand is very strongly a Ta'veren. This is people who, a very lightly, sort of casual Ta'veren might be an influencer, someone who changes things, right? And then, some people can change things a lot and actually shift the whole pattern of an age, the whole sort of zeitgeist, and that would be Rand. So in this story, Rand has the ability to disrupt chance because he's so Ta'veren that he's disrupting chance as he passes through. It changes the course of people's behavior just because of his presence. And then Matt, in this case, is plays dice. He's our gambler character, and he's able to actually, randomness seems to change around him, to his favor. So to me, that was really an interesting part of the story. And then I just wanted to touch base on the traveling people. Again, I've talked about them in previous books, people who follow the way of the leaf. These are pacifist, non-violent people. And to me, there was a character at the beginning of this book that was one of the traveling people. And they're also called tinkers in some cases. So they've got several different names. But she doesn't fight the Dark One with violence. She has a quote here that I think was really cool that sort of explains their view, their philosophy of nonviolent resistance or nonviolence. Like their tool is nonviolence. It says, violence harms the doer as much as the victim, Leia said placidly. That is why we flee from those who harm us, to save them from harm to themselves as much for our own safety. If we do violence to oppose evil, soon we would be no different from what we struggle against. It is with the strength of our belief that we fight the shadow. So, there's different people are fighting the shadow in different ways. They're using whatever they have at their disposal. In this case, Leia and the traveling people have nonviolence on their side, and they have a different way of fighting than some of our other main characters, and Perrin specifically, but our other characters sometimes struggle to understand their ways and how they can be nonviolent in the face of the Dark Friends and the Dark One. So I just think that was really interesting. And then finally, just to wrap up, I found the definition of a interesting word. I was reading along in this sentence, and I came across a word I didn't know, so I looked it up. The sentence was, he looked almost as tired as the people he was chivying. So I looked up the definition of chivying because I wasn't sure what the definition of that word was, and it means to tell someone repeatedly to do something. Origin, late 18th century, probably from the ballad Chevy Chase, celebrating a skirmish, probably the Battle of Otterburn, 1388, on the Scottish border, but often mistakenly thought to be a place name. Originally a noun denoting a hunting cry, the term later meant a pursuit, hence the verb to chase, worry, from the mid-19th century. I thought this was really interesting because it says here it's probably from the ballad Chevy Chase from the late 18th century, and I actually live in Chevy Chase. Chevy Chase, the city right outside my window here, I live in Chevy Chase, Maryland. So that was kind of cool. I thought kind of a cool coincidence. All right, I think I will leave the chat with that. I'm essentially out of time. My next chat, the next book in this series is called The Shadow Rising. I'm going to take a couple of months off before I pick up and read a couple of more in this series, but I will get to that eventually in a couple of months. But my next chat is going to be a biography of Grant, President Grant from the U.S. by Ron Chernow. I've already finished this, so I should have a chat on it coming up fairly soon. Until next time, take care. Bye.